Hello and welcome to another episode of our Brothers Creed podcast, where we talk about motivation, experiences, and exploring the world around us. I'm Jared.
I'm Ethan. And today we're going to be speaking with Jayden Brian. Jayden is a good friend. He really has an entrepreneurial mindset. One of his businesses that we're going to be talking about today is how he guides American buffalo hunts in Utah. So we have a great podcast for you today, some awesome stories and experiences to go along with it. So let's get to it.
You can't climb the ladder of success with your hands in the pocket.
We will not go quietly into the night.
They tell me you're a man with true grit.
I am the one who knocks. Don't ever tell me what I can't do, ever!
That's how winning is done.
All right, Jayden, thank you for joining us today for the podcast.
You're welcome.
Yes, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, so Jayden and I, actually, Jayden's one of my good friends. We've known each other for over 10 years now, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But just a couple things about Jayden. Starting off, Jayden, you're born and raised in Utah, right?
Yes.
You currently live there now. You have 2 kids, beautiful family, and we're really grateful that you took the time to sit down with us and talk about some of your endeavors.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. So I have.
Let me ask, what part of Utah do you live in?
South Central Utah. We live in a little town called Bicknell, Utah.
Okay. South
About,
Central.
yeah.
Okay, so you
in
live
the Wayne
south
County.
of Nephi. South of Nephi, which is
South of Nephi.
after that is
yep.
like basically tiny towns.
Yeah, it's pretty much Nephi then St. George. That's about what people know.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Cool.
yeah, we're about, I guess you'd say about halfway between those two.
Okay,
Surrounded by Capitol Reef National Park, Fish Lake.
Oh, okay.
Those are the main tourist attractions around us.
Nice. I used to live up in Bountiful area, so
Yeah.
quite a bit further north than you, but still got to enjoy some of the outdoor wonders of Utah.
Yeah.
It's just such a strange place in that there's so many. It's like within the state of Utah, there's like 20 different types of climates. It's like you could be like in a jungle, like you're in the movie Avatar, and then you're in the middle of the desert in like Arches National Monument, and it's like you're on Mars. I mean, it's just the climate varies so much. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Except for there's no beach. That's one thing I didn't like about it.
Yeah. No, none of that.
Yeah, and it differs a little bit from North Carolina. Just with, I mean, here it's like you look and you see maybe 100 yards, and then the canopy of trees, like you can't see anything else. But out there you can see the mountains in the background. I mean, depending on where you're at, and it's pretty cool. So, Jayden, you and I have had the opportunity to work together on several different things. We served together on our mission trip in South America, and one thing that I always admired from you is that you're hardworking and you've got a lot of talents, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on, is just because you're just an interesting dude, and that's what we wanted to.
We're trying to be interesting dudes, so we have people on that are cool.
Yeah, so it's like you are who you associate with, so we're trying to associate more. But I wanted to I know you took some of those talents and you've kind of grown them into some different lifestyles in what you do in several different businesses, and we want to talk about those businesses today. So one of the main ones that really interests me is your it's Bull Mountain Outfitters, correct?
Yeah.
And so this is where you lead guided buffalo hunts there in Utah. I know you have a love for the outdoors. Do you mind telling us a little bit about that? How did you get into that? How did you start that business?
So I started hunting, at a very young age. Any species that was around, local deer, elk, rabbit hunting. We'd hunt them all. Waterfowl, upland game, but bison hunting that's unique to South Central Utah. They're located on the Henry Mountains, and they are one of 4 disease-free, genetically pure, free-ranging bison in the world. So it's a very unique herd of bison, and I've seen the bison ever since I was little down there, but was invited to help on a hunt back when I was 17 years old. And then I started helping out after that, went on the mission I came back home, had a couple people ask me if I could help again. And so then in 2014, I became a licensed guide in the state and worked under a different outfitter. And then 2016, I thought, why not just cut out the middleman and become my own outfitter? I didn't have control over who the outfitter hired or anything like that. So I wanted to have my say. I wanted to have respectful guys working for me that respected the land, respected other people and everything like that. So that's where I started and why I wanted to start my own outfitting business.
I was just gonna say, so what kind of licensing do you have to do to start a business like that from the state?
So in the state of Utah, to be an outfitter, you have to pass an outfitter's exam through the Department of Professional Licensing. Then you have to go through whichever jurisdiction your land is on. So for example, the Henry Mountains reside in the Richfield Bureau of Land Management District. So I have to have a special recreation permit through them. Basically, what the BLM says is if you're out on our property making money, then we want to make money as well. So you get that license, and what they do is they check your licensure, make sure that you've got liability insurance to cover the land in case you cause any damage to it. And then make sure that it's not oversaturated with other outfitters. And then if all that checks out, they give you the license, and then you pay them a percentage of your gross at the end of the year.
So you're only doing BLM land then?
Yeah, that's what I have. I did have another permit for national forest land, but I never used it. That would have been to guide like deer and elk, bear, lion. But I didn't ever use it, so I just stuck to bison.
Mountain lion, that is.
Yeah, mountain lion.
Now, do you only do buffalo, or is that your license only for buffalo, or is your license really for anything you kill out there as long as you have the right tags?
So you decide when you submit the paperwork what you want it to be for. So I submitted it for all species of animals that reside within that BLM district. So I can guide mountain lion or bear or deer hunts or anything like that within that area. But I wanted to specialize in one thing and just do that really well. And I'm actually the only outfitter that is dedicated entirely to Henry Mountain Bison. That's all I do.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah.
So how does a typical hunt reside? I mean, how does it work? Is it usually like a multi-day hunt, or is it, you go up in the morning and you come back in the evening? How does that work out?
So the Henry's is unique in that unless you're putting up, tent camping where you're driving all the way up onto the mountain and setting up a tent camp, then you're going to be driving a lot. And that's usually what we do. So we'll camp, anywhere from 2 to 5 miles off the paved road, but then we're 12 miles away from where we're going to start hunting. So we end up putting a lot of miles on the side by side and four-wheelers and stuff like that. So typical day is get up in the morning and try to get up in the area where we're going to start hunting before dawn, and try and locate them and then make a play on them. And where we're that far out, we just stay there the whole day, come back in the evening. The bison are really unique in that they have somewhat of a schedule, but these bison, they're so nomadic and very spooky. So they don't really mess around at all. If they smell a human or think that they've smelled a human or think that somebody's bumped them, then they just run for 2, 3, 4, 5 miles before they even stop.
So this isn't like shooting cattle.
No.
No. Do you usually find them in a herd, or are they usually by themselves whenever you find them? How does that work?
It depends on the time of year. If it's in the early or late spring time when they're calving, and then when they're in their rut cycle, when the cows come into estrus and then they're breeding, then they're grouped up into big groups, 100, 150 a group. So, but that doesn't last very long. They usually break up that grouping around September, and then the bulls will usually split off and go into their own little bachelor herds of 5 or so. The cows will break up into little groups of 10 to 15, and then that's usually about where you find them. So for a big bull, what we're looking for is a lone bull. That usually means he's really old. He's been just kicked out of the herd. He's all by himself. And unlike deer or elk that kind of regress their antler size as they get older, bison just get more massive and more lengthy. So if you're looking for a score, that's what you want, is a really, really old one.
Nice. How many I just have so many questions, but how many trips do you do a year, I guess?
The most I've done is 7. I've guided 7 hunts in 1 year. Just this past season, we did 3. Uh, that's about average, 3 to 5 a year.
I mean, you must be crazy busy during hunting season. When is that? You might have said this, but when is hunting season again?
So average depends, but mostly it's just November and December.
November and
Usually the
December.
busiest
Okay,
months.
so that's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
holiday season is like boom, busy,
Yeah.
busy. Cool.
Yep.
What would someone expect to pay for something like that? I mean, I know there's probably a draw, right, that you have to
Sure.
put in. But even just, I mean, after that, what's an average expense for something like that? I guess it might depend
Yes.
by outfitter, but
Yeah, sure. So if you're a resident of Utah, just the permit fee alone is, I believe it's around 450 right now. That's if you draw the tag. If you're a non-resident and you draw, I think it's around $1,500 just for the permit alone.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, if you want to hire a guide, average fees, I think the lowest I've seen for about a 7-day guided hunt is around $5,000. The most expensive I've seen is $8,500. I sit about in the middle, $6,500 for 7 days. But it does depend on what they want. You know, if they want other accommodations like lodging or food, things like that, we can add those packages on as well. But
yeah, that was going to be kind of a follow-up question to that one is, you know, sometimes you hear like guided hunts and you know, you hear about stories of like the guide basically does everything and then you know, sets up like a ground pad and then like loads the rifle and just sets it down and the person just lays down and pulls the trigger. I mean, obviously this is probably different than that, but how involved are you as a guide? I mean, do you just find them and then let them do their business, or how does that work out?
so from the start, just a typical package would be a 7-day hunt. It's myself plus another guide. So there's 2 people working for the person, and we'll commit guiding or scouting days prior to the hunting start date. And then there's the 7 days of hunting. And so we'll go out and find some. And then on opening day, we'll go out and make a play on them. And what that typically means is myself as the guide or the other guide, we just work together, and I'll be with the hunter and we'll be walking out. And then the spotter or the other guide will set him on a hill or somewhere where he can have a big vantage point. And we'll just have radios communicate with each other in case they've moved or in case they move while we're working in on them. And then that's how we work together as a team, guiding each other in. And then so I'm right with the person when they shoot. And part of the reason behind that is the bison behave a lot more differently than deer and elk do. You got to cue in to their behavior and what they're trying to perceive from you as well. Like I said, they don't really give you many chances or many breaks on if you're trying to sneak in. We had an incident in October where we were sneaking in, and I was sitting back glassing. I was the spotter that day, and I sent my other guide in with the hunter, and I was watching the herd, and they were about to bed down, and suddenly they all turned and looked right in the direction where the guys were. And I radioed and said, I don't know what you did, but they didn't like that. And he radioed back and said, well, we just unlaced our boots. That's all we did, just unlace our boots. So just that sound of like a string snapping on a boot lace, and it made them scared. They took off running.
Oh man.
What were they unlacing their boots for? So they could
sneak quieter,
stalk in in socks or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's quieter that way.
Yeah,
and you're a little more. It forces you to be slower too if you have your boots off, because you're actively watching what you're stepping on.
So if you bag one the first day, they paid the money. You're like, hey, we don't have to be out here for 7 days now.
Yep,
but absolutely. I guess you have to go return a bunch of food to Costco or something like that, right?
Yeah. So obviously, I make more money the quicker I get it done. That's the incentive for me and the other guide, is to get it done quick.
Do you guarantee a kill, or is it like, well, you may or may not?
So I'm confident enough that I asked, when I set up my business, I asked the attorney that helped me if I could do that, and he's like, yeah, I wouldn't do that. That's not wise, because there's a lot of things that are out of my control.
Yeah, totally.
We could have bad weather for 7 days in a row, the activity of other people, the activity of the bison themselves, and then the skill level of the hunter too that I'm taking. I have no idea. They could tell me on the phone if they could chalk themselves up as the best hunter in the world, and then when they get out to it, they're out of shape, or they're really noisy, or just not good hunters,
Yeah.
The bad shot or whatever. I mean, if they miss every
Yeah,
single
I've had that too.
opportunity, then
Yeah, I've had that too.
Like, you missed him. He was like a barn.
yeah. Have you ever come in, had any, like, I don't know, close encounters? I mean, the only encounter I've ever had with bison or with buffalo is like in Yellowstone, right, where you see them on the
Those
side
are
of the
basically
road
domesticated.
yeah, I mean, what have you ever had any kind of encounters that are you got to watch out for? Walked up on one that, I mean, I guess they're hard to sneak up on, but
Yeah, they're just like other animals in that if you keep your scent and you stay out of sight and you keep your movement to a minimum, they're just like us. They pick up on movement and noise, just like you and I. If you see something out of your peripheral, then it catches your attention. So they're just like us in that aspect. But close encounters, I had one where I was sitting back about 200 yards away watching I took a veteran out. He was hunting with me, and I was about 200 yards away, and he was working in, and I was sitting right on the main game trail, and the herd was in front of me. And as I was sitting there, we just come off some ledges behind me that were only about 60 yards away, and my eyes were right in the binos, just watching this herd, waiting for this guy to get in on him. And I heard rocks falling behind me, and I turned around and looked, and there were 7 bulls coming down the trail that I was on. And I had everything set out. My backpack's opened up, my tripod's out in front of me, everything's open. And so I'm scrambling to grab everything. And I turned back around last time, and they were about 25 yards from me, and they still hadn't seen me yet. And so The wind was still good, so they hadn't smelled me, and they were just in such a hurry. I don't know if something had scared them or not, but and I jumped off the side, and they kind of went by. But that one was kind of scary. But that wasn't intentional. That was just kind of an accident. But I had another time where we watched this bull work up into a basin way up high. And so we went up and sat on the rim of the basin, watched until lunchtime, and the bull never came out. And so I said, I'll go in the trees and see if I can work him out back into the opening, and then you shoot him. And the guy's like, all right. So I work into the trees and I start walking through there, and I see a flash of something real quick. And I just saw a tail with a white tip on it. And then in the next gap of trees, I saw it was a mountain lion. I jumped a mountain lion. And then I kept walking, and then I saw the bison. He was bedded right there at the edge of the trees, and he was about maybe 35 yards from me. And he stood up, and he's turned like he was going to go out into the opening, but then he started to turn back into the tree. So I took off to try and cut him off, but it's kind of hard to stop a buffalo. He just ran right past me.
Yeah, that reminds me of, I had a similar experience. I went elk hunting once in the Uintas, and it was my first time going hunting, actually. Well, actually, that was my second. And me and a buddy had gone way out, and almost near, like, eastern Idaho, eastern Utah. So we've gone pretty far out in the Uintas, and it was like that evening that we got there, and there was kind of a field that was really wide open, and there was a little like rock little pile. And so I was like, we were laying on the rock pile. I mean, it was like 1 or 2 rocks. So we were both just like laying down, and I was like totally laying on my back, just like glassing the whole ridgeway, or the whole opposite side of the field. And then he was right to my back, and he was glassing the other side. And then all of a sudden I hear, and I'm like, what the heck? And so I just take my binoculars off, and there is a cow moose, and a calf, probably 20 yards from me or closer. And it was like barking at me, I guess you could call it. And I was like, oh shoot. And so I tried to reach around and grab my buddy and dude, but I didn't want to make too much noise, and my arm couldn't reach that far back, and I was just like, hey, I was just trying to yell over my shoulder, but it was just sat there kind of just growling at me for a minute or two, and I was like, I'm going to be trampled. My wife's going to kill me again after I die. And so that was kind of reminding me of your story where something kind of snuck up on you. I was like, wow, I'm not a very good hunter if this thing sneaks up on me.
Those cow moose, I've heard of that they can be pretty aggressive, especially if they've got calves. So
yeah. So luckily that one did have calves. So luckily I just remained very still, and it just walked right past us, probably 10 feet from us.
But the story that probably that I could have been in the most danger, but I put myself in the position. I had a guy that was 83 years old. This was last year, 2019 season. And he had 3 days left in the hunt. They hadn't seen anything. And so they called me. He was bound to the road. He couldn't walk hardly at all. And so I said, well, yeah, I'll take you. We'll just do a road hunt, I guess. And on the very last day of the hunt, we'd hunted the second last day, the final day of the hunt, we're going out to this spot, and I cut some fresh tracks. I just see a set of tracks going across the road, and they were big bull tracks. And I told the guy, I said, I know right where this bull is. And he's like, where? And I said, he's at the end of this track. If I stay on this track and don't leave it, I'll run into him, guaranteed. He's like, oh yeah, haha, real funny. But it's very true. When you're tracking an animal, if you just stay on the track and never leave it, you'll find it eventually. And this was fresh enough right in the morning, and he had just watered. And he went to a spot that I'm very familiar with. So there's kind of a ridge line that parallels the road. And on the other side of the ridge line is a deep basin that they like to go into. And I figured that's where he was headed. So I set the guys up to watch the dad and his son to watch this deep basin. And I went up onto the ridge line, and it's all burned off except for a couple little patches of pinyon juniper. And I glass in there. I don't see him. And then I walk into there, and I get into the trees, and I can see him, and he's bedded down, and he hasn't seen me yet. The wind was blowing pretty hard, so he couldn't hear or smell me. And I just sat there, and I thought, gosh dang it, I've just busted this up. I mean, he's going to take off running, go into that hole. I've ruined this, and this guy's not going to have a chance at a buffalo. And I was feeling pretty bad. And as I'm sitting there, the buffalo turns, and he looks at me. He's still bedded. And then he stands up because he realizes something isn't right. And he's facing straight on, and there's just a tree between the both of us, just a small tree. And then he turns and walks away from me. And as he's walking away, I'm waiting for him to turn to my left side and go down into this deep basin. And off to my right side is that road that parallels the ridge line. And a light bulb goes off in my head, and I'm like, gosh, if I stay between him and that basin, he might go off to that road. There's no way this is going to work, but I'm going to try it. So I take off, and I'm not hurting him. I'm just running like parallel with him. Every time that he like jogs, I just jog along with him. Uh-huh. And it didn't occur to me, we'd go together, and then he'd stop, and then we'd go together. And I did this for about a mile and a half. I went and measured it afterwards on Google Earth. We did this. He'd go and he'd stop, and he'd go and he'd stop, and he'd go and he'd stop. And after like this third time that he stopped, we were out in the wide open at this point. In my head, I was like, this probably wasn't the smartest thing to do. I'm kind of agitating.
Challenging him.
Yeah. And he stops, and he'll look at me, and his tail's in the air, which is a sign that they're not very happy. And we finally run out of ridgeline, and he hooks off the end of the point. And this whole time I've got the guy on the radio, and I'm saying, hey, this bull might run to the road. Get on this part of the road in your razor, and then stop and shut the machine off. There's like a hairpin turn in the road. And they get there, and they stop their machine. And I radio him, and I say, hey, this buffalo just turned, like he's running that way. You might see him. And the buffalo had to cut back towards the way we just came from. And he did. Like miraculously, just straight line towards that hairpin in the road, straight for those guys. And there's a little hill. And I remember seeing the buffalo go up over the little hill, and I can't see those guys. They're just behind that hill. And I say, just get ready. He's right here. He's coming. And then I hear the gunshots going off, and he killed him like 80 yards from the road.
Oh, wow.
It was so cool.
But
cool. Yeah, that time I was a little nervous that I was going to get challenged.
It's like getting stuck in between a train and a brick wall or something, a set of trees.
Yeah.
What's the furthest shot you've seen?
892 yards.
800 yards?
Yeah.
Holy moly.
With a what?
6.5 Creedmoor.
Yeah.
So that hunt, this one will tell you how wily they are, like how aware of scent they are. This was like day 4 or day 5 of a cow bison. And the cow hunts are harder because the cows like to hang out because they're in December, and it's their winter range. It's roadless stuff. It's really hard to get in on them. And they're in these groups of 10 to 15. So you've got all those eyes and ears and noses just tuned in to humans. Mm-hmm. So we've just been like 10 minutes late every day to get in on one. So this day 4, I think it was, we get in, and this herd is sitting really high, just below this bluff, just below these ledges. They just come out of water. I glassed them up that morning and we went after them. And so we're going up this drainage and they're just right in front of us. They can't see us. We're out in the wide open, but we're far enough away they can't see us. And I sent my spotter up higher just to watch their behavior, because again, you can cue in on their behavior. And Chris was his name, and his son was with us. And Chris is 60 years old. He was a pretty fit guy, but I was pushing. I was like, we've got to like almost run. We got to get in here, because they're only taking a break for a second. They're bedded down, but they're going to go up on top of those ledges. And we've been 10 minutes late the past 3 days, and I don't want to be 10 minutes late again. So we're getting there. And I felt the wind was good coming right at us the whole time. And I suddenly felt the wind shift, like the thermal started rising up, it's getting that time in the morning. And I felt the thermal shift, and I felt a breeze at the back of my neck. And I said, okay, Chris, we got to stop right here. And we got to get you ready to shoot. And the buffalo they were still bedded. Nothing was happening. And so I get him laying prone. I get him set up on the gun. We dial the scope to 892 yards. And higher, my spotters got the buffalo just watching him. He goes, oh, one just lifted its head. And he has it on video later, and the buffalo just lifts his nose in the air. And he's like, yeah, you've been had. And we were 900 yards away, and the buffalo lifts his nose in the air, and then the others do. And then they all stand up within about 5 or 6 seconds of that one lifting his nose in the air. And they hadn't seen us. They just winded us off of that little breeze. And so long story short, I think he shot 3 times at that yardage, and he hit her in the hind quarter, which she wasn't going to go anywhere. So then we got into, I think it was 560, and he finished her off. And that one was cool. That was in like sheep terrain, like big cliffs, and she rolled down like a mountain goat. Man, it was intense. It was cool.
That's a long shot. So normally you're probably talking a couple hundred, like 300 yards, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Usually I tell people I have the convenience of being able to like vet the people that I take out, because it's good income to bring in, but it's not necessary income. So it's something that I can choose and pick who I want to take out.
And you don't want to be miserable out there with some.
Yeah, exactly. Yahoo. Yeah. There's definitely clients that are awesome to take out and you become lifelong friends. And then there's some people that aren't very good. So I have the convenience of being able to choose. Mm-hmm. And in that process, if somebody says like, yeah, I can shoot 100 yards pretty good. No, I'm like, I'm booked.
No go. Yeah,
I'm booked.
Yeah,
solid for the rest of your life.
But I usually tell them, if you can shoot like 400 yards, pretty decent. And if you had to make a 500-yard shot, could you? And if they're like, yeah, I've done 400 a few times, 500 is pretty good. And if not, then I say, well, I can bring my gun as well, and we can shoot that at camp, get you comfortable with it, just in case we have to make a far shot. So
now, I guess I've two questions burning a hole in my brain. One is, how do you pack that out of there? I mean, those are huge animals. It could be upwards of probably 800 pounds in some cases. I guess correct me if I'm wrong. And then my second question was, isn't a bison a once in a lifetime hunt, or how do you get those tags?
Yeah. So the first question, I used to always take horses, no matter what. That was my number one thing, was horses to go in and hunt, horses to pack it out. And then I started, I had bad experiences with horses, like where people would say, yeah, I can ride a horse. But the terrain that these buffalo live in, I joke with people and say, I don't know whose idea it was to breed a black Angus and a mountain goat, because that's what Henry mountain bison are. Because they jump up ledges, they jump down ledges, they jump across 10-foot gaps. I mean, they're nuts. They're so crazy. So if you're not a very advanced rider that can get on and off your horse by yourself and go up and down ledges by yourself, and I just ended up in scenarios where we got to places like that, and the people were like, yeah, I'm not comfortable doing this. And then I'm, 12 miles in with a person that can't ride a horse. So
yeah,
I leave the horses home now, to pack them out. So surprisingly, Henry mountain bison, they've got a more athletic build than your Yellowstone bison do. Uh-huh. I attribute that personally to their lifestyle and then their habitat, what they're grazing on and stuff. Their Yellowstone bison aren't being pushed around like Henry mountain bison are. They're just kind of lazy and just lay down and
walking down the road, getting their picture taken.
Exactly.
eating trash and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. These Henry's bison, they're really athletic. They run a lot. I mean, they're just so I think over time that has produced just a smaller body size. Not that they're tiny by any means, but a big bull on the hoof probably weighs 1,800 pounds, 2,000 pounds. And then a cow is around 800 to 1,000 pounds or 1,200 pounds if she's real big. But the harvest or the yield that you get on that is much different than a beef cattle. It's a lot less. So on a cow bison, if you debone all the meat, and that's usually what we're doing is debone it. We don't really bring back the bones. But deboned meat, you might get 130 pounds of meat is all.
Really? Off of 1,000 pound animal?
1,000 pound cow.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
Only
really
100 pounds of meat.
minimal. So a lot of that has to do with they have lots of guts in there. So there's a lot of digestive stuff. And then there's a lot of bone structure and sinew and stuff. Their head's kind of heavy, their hide's heavy. But actual meat, I mean, their hindquarters, I've killed a spike elk and I've got more meat off of it than
yeah, I was going to say.
bison. So, and then a big bull, you probably double that. It's around 200 to 250 pounds of meat.
You can pack that out. I mean, you just packed it out on your back, right?
Yeah. So we'll put it on our backs and pack it out. We divvy it up. We've made a couple of trips before, but like this, a typical, if we're on a cow hunt, is we'll pack out, like I'll put a quarter on me, plus the back straps and the tenderloins and plus the skull. And then if we have to, I'll put another, just one of the shoulders, because the shoulders are maybe 20 pounds of meat. And then Hiram or Aaron or whoever else is helping me will have the other half. And we've done it that way. It's a mean pack out. If you have 3 people, it's a lot better. But with a bull, you usually need about 4 people or 2 people in 2 trips. The best investment that I bought last year is called a pack wheel. It's a battery operated unicycle thing. So, and it's got panniers on each side of the tire.
Uh-huh.
And so I've loaded a full bull bison on that thing, like over 200 pounds of meat. And it's got a battery on it, and it's got a little throttle, and you can just put
it's
up.
It's like a one-wheeled Segway.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet with handlebars on the back. I mean, it's cool.
That's cool.
So that thing saved my back a lot. That thing's awesome.
What about that was a great answer, by the way. That's very interesting. I could
once in a lifetime.
Yeah, the lifetime thing. How about that?
So once in a lifetime, it is in the state of Utah. It's once in a lifetime. So meaning, if you draw the tag, you will never draw it again, regardless if you harvest or not. Now, there are other places that you can draw multiple times than that, or ranches where you can go and hunt bison. You pay for a tag and you can go hunt them. So
interesting. So there's a lot of pressure that's a lot of pressure on you to be like, yo, this is my once in a lifetime. If I don't get this, then I'm never going to get it. And you're like,
yeah. And I try to set realistic expectations in the front, that they have to understand that there's only about 400 bison on the mountain total, and they inhabit 300,000 acres. And so the population density is real slim. So I try and set those expectations that, the chances of seeing one are pretty slim, and the chances of getting in on one are even slimmer, and then the chance of killing one is even harder than that. The cow hunts, they have an average success of 40 to 50% success rate, harvest rate. So half the people usually go home without killing one.
The bull hunts a higher rate?
Yeah. So it's a cow only, and then a hunter's choice. So they can choose either sex on those tags, but those ones do have a higher success rate.
Wow. Yeah. That would just be, I don't know, for I think for the average Joe, probably like myself, it'd be really cool just to just go and watch the process of something like that. I mean, that's just an experience that I think most people don't get to experience things like that. It's just kind of cool.
It's pretty wild.
It is. It's funny because I was in a restaurant the other day and they had a taxidermied elk on the wall, which is abnormal out here in South Carolina, because you don't get elk very much. And I heard the guy in the next table over, and he was sitting with, I think, another couple, him and his wife were sitting with another couple, and he was like, "Man, that's a huge deer. I don't know, you got to kill that thing with like a bazooka or something." And I'm like, that's not a deer, that's an elk. And I was like, and you do have to, but like with elk, I mean, I feel like the yield, the meat yield is so much compared to, I would have thought the bison would have been like unbelievable amounts of meat. I mean, you're just packing it out on like sleds and all kind of stuff, but that's very surprising that it's only that much. But
yeah, my wife and I watched this, we watched this show, I was on Netflix or something like that, and it was about these people that lived up in this mountain in like Kentucky or Tennessee or something like that, and it showed that they were kind of like homesteader type people, and they went out for a hunt and they killed a huge elk. And I was like, elk in Tennessee? I was like, that's not right. I was like, that's not possible. Then I actually did some research, and I found out like in like the 60s or something like that, they did a huge transplant of like thousands of elk into like the Appalachian Mountains and on the eastern side of the country, but most of them didn't survive. They didn't really breed out, and they so maybe there's a couple left. But
I heard a story once of a girl, like it was like she was a young girl, like probably less than 15, and I want to say she was like 10 or 11, and she was on a hunt with her dad, and she was going like a whitetail hunt, and she ended up shooting an elk. And she's like, I didn't know this was an elk. It looked like a deer, and the only thing out here is whitetail, so she just killed it.
Whoops.
Yeah. It's like, that's a lot more meat than you probably bargained for. So
now, I'm kind of an idiot, so this might not be true, but I had heard that Rocky Mountain elk were plains animals to begin with. The antler size, I mean, just imagine that. I don't think evolutionarily that makes sense that those would grow to that size
in the trees,
in highly dense woods, So yeah, it would make sense that they would be out in the plains.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, I was going to say, I know that this, so this is kind of a business that you run obviously on the side. And I kind of want to get into, kind of your entrepreneurial spirit, to a certain extent. I know that you do this. Also, you have a career that you work on as well. I know that you've started a couple other businesses. You breed dogs, and you do have a hydroseating business. Share with us a little bit about kind of these other businesses that you have, and then I have a couple questions about kind of that entrepreneurial mindset.
Okay, so to start out, we I guess our first entrepreneurial idea was in our first home that we did. Now, we had the opportunity to build with, it's called like a mutual housing program. It's meant for lower income families to afford their first home. And we built in the south end of Utah County, and we built at a time when building costs happened to be relatively low, and we had a bunch of sweat equity in the home by the time we moved in. I think we had about $30,000 in equity, but just from the sweat equity of helping build it. And then by the time we left, we had been in the home for about 2.5 years. I mean, that's when housing was kicking up really quickly, and we made a lot of money on that house, and that allowed us to get completely out of debt. We haven't been in debt since. So that was that was probably the biggest thing that's helped us out. During that same time is when I started Bull Mountain Outfitters. And so that as supplemental income has helped us, again, stay out of debt and just kind of wait and afford things as we make money.
Is that when you moved into the country after you sold that house in Utah County?
Yeah. So I had the opportunity to move down to here to South Central Utah. I started my degree in healthcare administration, and I worked up in Utah County at a dental clinic doing HR management and IT support. I actually got that job just because I spoke Spanish. So I knew nothing about dental. Let's see. I knew nothing about Spanish or about dental or anything in that field, but I got the job because I spoke Spanish, and then really owe a lot of my success in the healthcare field to that fact that I speak Spanish. And then I got offered the job down here. I actually did some trainings and things like that for the clinic that's down here in Bicknell. And then a few months later, I was offered a job to come and work here. So that's when we sold the house, moved down here, and I started Bull Mountain Outfitters and had that supplemental income. And then I actually did all the sweat equity on this house as well. So it took us about 9.5, 10 months to finish. But I mean, gosh, we have tons of equity in this house now. So I think 110,000 in equity by the time we moved in.
That's awesome, being able to kind of like contribute to the building of something as well that you're going to live in.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
It's pretty cool. So then the Hydroseat business started because we'd been in the house 6 months or so. And I contacted a guy that did our Hydroseat in Utah County that was a neighbor of mine. And I said, I've researched around here, and there's nobody that does Hydroseat down here where I'm at in this area.
Can you explain what Hydroseat is?
So Hydroseat is a slurry, or like a matrix that you, like a bonded fiber matrix or a paper matrix slurry mix that you put grass seed in and fertilizer in, and then you spray that on bare dirt. And that fiber and that mesh it holds moisture in really well, and it just keeps the seed at the perfect depth for grass to grow. So people use it mostly for turf grass, but you can put any type of seed in there. So anyways, I wanted some grass, I wanted some lawn, and Hydroseat is a quarter of the price of sod. So that's the main reason why I wanted it. And it looked really good. So the guy said, that's too far for me. You're 3 hours south of us. And I was comfortable enough. I mean, he's a neighbor. So I said, well, would you mind teaching me how to do it? And he's like, yeah, of course. And this guy's done it for 25 or 30 years or something like that. So he's been around a long time. So I went under his tutelage, if you will, and started out and just kind of got a feeler around the area. And people were, yeah, come, let's try it out here. Let's try it out there. And then, so the first year I did it, I ended up doing, I think, 26 different lawns. And then just this last year, so I've been doing it 2 years. This last year I did, I think it's 57.
Wow.
But these are country lawns too, right?
Yeah.
These aren't like little postage stamp houses. Yeah. These are country lawns.
Yeah. I mean, I've done everything in between. I've done little teeny 500 square foot, and I've done all the way up to 65,000 square feet. So about an acre and a half, and now I'm starting to do jobs for construction companies. Like I just did a job doing soil erosion control. So Hydroseat on a dam that they did for a reservoir. So it's crazy. It just keeps expanding.
Do you have guys that work for you, or are you doing this mostly yourself, or?
No, just all myself. I mean, we're small enough, and the demand is like just right for the area that we're in, that I think if I wanted to expand to outer cities and stuff like that, I could pick up another person. But the bad part about me is I have a trouble letting go of that control. Like I know exactly the quality control that I put in, and if I hire somebody else, I don't know what quality I'm going to get. And that's hard for me to let go of right now. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
So that's a spring job, and then you got a summer, and then you got a winter job doing the hunting, and then the rest of the time you fit in your other job.
Yeah. So I work full time at the clinic, doing marketing, advertising, IT support, a bunch of other different things. I have a boss that's amazing, the CEO. He's a big time hunter too, so he's pretty forgiving when I need time off to go hunt or to guide. And then Hydroseat, it's pretty easy as far as like if I want to do a lawn after work, I can just go spray a lawn after work. It's pretty quick. And then we also have the hunting dog. So we actually bought our first hunting dog. She's a field-bred golden retriever. When we lived in Elk Ridge, when we lived in Utah County, we wanted a family dog, but we wanted something that could kind of earn her keep. So I wanted something that could retrieve ducks and retrieve pheasants and chukars and go hunt antlers with me, pick up antlers and help me and stuff. So that's why I picked that breed. And then we decided that we were going to pursue it. So we pursue breeding in those competitive lines. So picking out reputable studs that have also been hunt tested, that have like elbows and hips certified, eyes certified, things like that, breeding really quality dogs back into the breed. So we have that too, kind of supplements income.
Do you have horses? You mentioned that you have used horses in the past. Do you have horses? Like, I don't know how big property you have.
No, my dad has horses. My father-in-law has horses, and that's enough horses for me. I don't have to feed them. So
yeah, geez, that's a big responsibility to have horses.
Yeah. I kind of like, just talking with you, kind of about the different things that you've been in. I kind of see a trend, right? You you find something that you with the buffalo, for example, you went on some buffalo hunts, and then you said, I kind of like this, and then you got to a point where you associated with people that did that, and then you kind of built yourself up to be, like you said, trying to be the best in one area at a specific thing, and then same thing with the hydroseeding, and you saw a need for yourself, and then you found somebody who did it, and then you went after that, and then you kind of learned that specific craft, and then developed that into something that's potentially profitable and a side business as well. So I just think that's really cool, and I think for listeners out there to be able to say, you can find things out there. I think it just takes that entrepreneurial spirit to say, hey, this is a problem that I had, or this is something that I had that needed to be solved, or this is something that I liked. Now, how can I potentially market this? How can I turn it around and create a business? And I just love that aspect of, the country that we live in, to be able just to say, hey, I like that. I'm going to do it. I'm going to learn as much as I can about it. And then I'm going to try to become an expert and move forward.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah,
absolutely. I've had the opportunity to guide. I mean, usually the people that pay for guides are pretty wealthy people. And I've had that really awesome opportunity to kind of pick their brains as to how they became successful and how they had the nerve to come up with different ideas and pursue different things. And a lot of times, almost consistent across the board, is that every one of those people, whether it's in light engineering, or whether it's in the oil field, gas field, mechanical engineering, or in inventing stuff. Like I took a guy that he's a really well-known guy because he's invented a lot of stuff in the archery industry. But a consistent across the board is they didn't necessarily invent something new. They just took already existing ideas and just perfected it, or they just did it really, really well. And it's surprising how people are willing to pay more for something that's done right. And that's kind of what I've tried to adapt is, with my Hydroseat, I go way out of my way. I travel 3 hours to get the materials that I need. When there's plenty other seed companies closer by, I go 3 hours away because I get quality stuff. With guiding bison hunts, I want to do something that's very specific. With the dogs, I make sure that they're all tested and they have their certifications, all that stuff too. Doing something, but doing it really to the maximum that you can, doing it really well. But yeah, I mean, the wheels are always turning. I mean, right now I've got ideas to do vacation rentals and long-term rentals. I actually just listened to your guys' podcast that you did a week or so ago, and that was really cool stuff too.
Yeah.
The arbitrage thing. That was
for sure.
Actually, she was so great. That was an excellent idea. I had never heard of that before.
But I mean, like camp trailer rentals, renting out our basement or something like that on Airbnb. I mean, there's the possibilities are endless. You really can do so much.
Yeah.
So, kind of on another note, I know you said that you had, you had a guy on the hunt that was 83 years old. Is that the oldest guy that you've had?
86 was
86.
the oldest.
What's the youngest person you've ever had? Is there an age limit to putting in for a tag?
30, let's see, 39, 38, I think was the youngest.
You got to have some money though. Unless it's like somebody with a rich guy and he wants to take his son and he's already bagged his bison.
I helped my buddy. He's just a year older than me. I helped him last year, so he would have been 30. But that was just a friend helping out a friend,
What's the difference between a bison and a buffalo?
Bison is the proper name.
Oh, okay.
The Latin name is bison. I guess it was such a good name they had to use it twice. I don't know. But that's the proper name. In America, there's wood bison and there's plain bison. Bison is the plains bison. That's what's on the Henrys.
Mm-hmm.
But buffalo usually refers to Cape buffalo, water buffalo, like African or Australian buffalo or South American buffalo. So that's the difference. But a lot of people just call it the American buffalo.
Now, the American buffalo, I remember when I was in like middle school, I did a project about endangered species, and the American buffalo was what I did. Mm-hmm. I assume that they're no longer an endangered species since they're being hunted. No. Is that correct?
No, that's correct. There was, I might get some of these numbers wrong, but they believe there was something around 43 million of them that used to roam across the plains. And then in the late or early 1800s, they got down to just a handful, a couple hundred that kind of stayed right there in Yellowstone. Yellowstone is one of the genetically pure herds, but they're not disease free. They have brucellosis in that herd. But the Henry's herd was transplanted from the Yellowstone herd back in 1941. There's 15 of them taken from their 3 bulls, and then the rest were cows, and they dropped those off near the Henry's out in the desert, and then they just kind of moved up onto the mountain. They've called it home ever since then. The Henry's herd did have brucellosis, but they inoculated them back in 62, and they've been disease-free ever since. Actually, every hunter that goes out there, they get a vial, blood vials. So when you harvest the animal, you send in 2 blood vials, and then they test every animal that's harvested.
To make sure you can eat the meat. Otherwise, you can't eat it, right?
I think you can eat it. You just got to cook it. Just gotta make sure it hits 165 degrees, and then you're good.
Do you ever get any of the meat?
Yeah.
They give you some of it?
People are like, I can't fly back with 300 pounds of meat. You take some, and you're like,
right.
I already have 6 freezers.
Yeah, so the furthest person away that's come and hunted was from Iowa, and they actually drove. And then I got a guy from Texas, and he drove. A guy from Oregon, he drove. A guy from Colorado. So all of them have driven. So then we'll usually just throw it in coolers, and they take it back home with them. But yeah, we do our best to whittle everything off. Roast off the neck, rib meat, stuff like that, tenderloins, shank meat, all that stuff. So there's usually not much left to pick through, but there's some left over.
Lungs, heart, liver.
Yeah.
All the guts that we talked about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
Well, this has been awesome, man. And, I want to be respectful of your time, but we could talk forever because you got so many interesting things to talk about. And it's been so great hearing from you. But one of the things kind of at the end of our episode here that we always like to talk about is we want to hear the personal creed of the people that we interview. So a creed is a set of beliefs or aims that guide your life. So wanted to see if you could share with us a piece of your own personal creed.
Absolutely. So I guess I kind of have 2 parts to it. I heard this saying quite a while ago. It's from a guy named Robert Heinlein, Heinlein. He says, a human being should be able to change a diaper, plan an invasion, butcher a hog, con a ship, design a building, write a sonnet, balance accounts, build a wall, set a bone, comfort the dying, take orders, give orders, cooperate, act alone, solve equations, analyze a new problem, pitch manure, program a computer, cook a tasty meal, fight efficiently, die gallantly. Specialization is for insects. So
that's awesome. I've never heard that before.
My poor wife has to deal with all my crazy ideas, and I think she's all right with it. It usually ends up working out, but I get lots of ideas and think, gosh, this ought to work, and this ought to, and I'm not, I think what trips a lot of people up is they just get scared thinking like, I don't know how to do that. Well, education doesn't cost anything. If you want a degree, that costs something, but education is free. You can go on YouTube and learn anything you want. So I love that. And then my other part to it is that I try not to ever be comfortable. If I'm comfortable where I'm at, then I feel like I've plateaued, and I don't think that I'll ever reach that. And I think if I tell myself that, and I always have that mindset, then I'll always be reaching for something better, knowing that I did my best, but I could have done a little bit better. Maybe go back, rewrite it, revise it, and try again. So with different projects that I do, or different ideas I have, or my income, or anything like that, I just think, how could I have done that a little bit better? And then I can, keep climbing on up.
That's great. I love that kind of that twofold, right? It's education is free. I mean, there's so many resources out there to go do it. And, if you don't know how to change a diaper, well, figure it out. Or if you don't know how to program a computer, figure it out, and I'm sure that there are people out there that are willing to share that information as well, and to help you learn. Is one thing that I've noticed in my life. Most people are willing to share their knowledge, and willing to help out. So.
Yeah, I think that's really one of the purposes of the podcast is to really expose ourselves and then our audience to lots of different things, so that they can become interested or find their interests, or they can learn lots of different things. Like we had a buddy of mine on just the other day, Matt, talked about cryptocurrencies and that hobby, and he's someone that also has a lot of different hobbies. So I'm also that way, and then I have lots of different types of hobbies, and so that's goes right along with our creed as the podcast to just explore lots of different things, and it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I heard the saying from our Ethan and I's mission president, President Bruce. I heard it from him first. He said, "It's not about what you know, but who you know." And Ethan said it just barely, but it's amazing how many people are willing to share how they became successful, even if you're wanting to like compete in that same field. I'm sure you'll come across a few sour people, but the majority, if you like that lady you had on the other day, you asked her, "How do I get into real estate in Charlotte?" And everything, she's willing to share it all, how she became successful and how to do it and what to avoid. And because I think, again, the majority of people are good people, and I think the majority of people want to see you succeed, even if they don't know you. So just don't be afraid to ask people. Don't be afraid to ask questions.
I love it. Jayden, where can people find you on social medias?
Yeah, so I have a Facebook and Instagram. My handle is at Henry MTN Bison Hunts, Henry Mountain Bison Hunts.
Awesome. For those listening out there as well, you can find us on Instagram at a.brothers.creed for the podcast. And also, we're going to be posting some pictures from some of the hunts and working with Jayden on Instagram to kind of make sure that you guys can see some of these cool things that we've been talking about as well. Also, you can watch this on YouTube. You got some bison heads behind you there on the wall. So if you want to check that out too, go ahead and follow us on our YouTube channel, also on Instagram.
Yeah. Thank you again so much. Really appreciate your time today. And for all the listeners, let's build our creed together.
All right, let's do it.